Hello, scrappers, recyclers, and investors interested in the world of recycling. Oh, man, hard to spit that out sometimes. Anyway, welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where we're on a mission to help you figure out how to get stuff out of the waste stream and into a resale, reuse, or recycle stream, and talking about all of the various business aspects that revolve around that fascinating world. It is great to be here with you all. Sorry we missed you last week. Yeah, what do you know? Things happen sometimes, right? But it is great to be back. We have some great stuff to talk about this week. As you know, we're going to, from the title, you could see that we're going to talk about our favorite metals, gold and copper. We're going to be talking about business contacts, and we have a really fun safety note that I think will, go well with everybody. Plus, we got some really fun stocks to look at today as well. So welcome, Scrapping Irish, JR Cat, Truck Fan 542, E-Waste Mike. Great to have you all here. Without any further ado, let's do this one there, and we did this one there, and now we're talking about gold. Man, look at gold. 24-hour chart here, and gold is going up. Now, as you all know, I use the APMEX website to talk about gold and silver prices for this live stream. I am not sponsored by APMEX, but I have used APMEX amongst many other places to buy and sell my physical gold and silver. So they're just one of the businesses that I've used. I like them. I can recommend them. Great place to do business there. Ralph Morick, welcome. Great to have you here. Carl, great to have you here. So gold on the way up for the 24-hour. Let's see how we're trending. Here is our 3-day. Well, if I push the right buttons, we'll get the 3-day. There we go. So we are up for the 3-day. And what you can see happened was we were kind of sort of plodding along here. We took a little bit of dip that may spooked a few people, and now we're climbing back out again. So, these kind of things happen if you're in the precious metal market as a trader. These kind of things, I can't even imagine what life must be like if you're a commodities trader and you deal with all these ups and downs that go on a regular basis. So when we look at the week, we had a bit of volatility going on with plenty of movement. So we can see we dropped, we climbed, we dropped, we climbed. I mean, this was just throughout the week. This is just playing out like this. But overall, we've had a nice growth for the week. So that is cool. We're up at almost 2050. So this is good. This is real good. We like to see these kind of trends. Let's see, what do we got going for the month? So when we look at the month, the volatility kind of gets a little bit smoothed out here, of course, but we can still see that for the month, we had quite a bit of volatility here as well. So, this is just the game that gets played out as these prices go on here. But, overall, we're still up. So that's a good thing. For the quarter, we are up almost 3%. Still plenty of volatility inside of that 3% rise, but overall a nice rise going on there. Year to date, we're down just a touch. So from the year to date, I think I've explained this before, but just in case you missed it, year to date is from the 1st of January through today. So 1st of January through today. It also helps if you push the right button here, Sharky. Year to date through the first of the year, we're down a little bit, 1.2%. But if we look at the year, so going back 365 days, we see that we are up 5 3/4, 5.79. So right from here up to there. So that's nice. But again, lots of volatility in this signal going on here. So, there's you see all this jaggedness, and you say to yourself, man, how do the scrap yards price what they pay us? How do they figure it out? Especially when you have this kind of volatility. Well, they've got to try to smooth things out, and they're forecasting out ahead. So they'll take these signals and they'll look out ahead. Of course, a lot of it depends on the sophistication of the scrapyard. Are they using any kind of forecasting software to help them with this? They're in constant conversations with their buyers. But the important thing for us is when you see these signals either trending up or steady at strong numbers like this, and let's just go look at the month here, because this is a good place to talk about it. So when we look at the month, there you go. When we look at the month, what we saw was this overall upward trend, not great, but up with some volatility. So it helps the yards to say, all right, I'm going to, with all this volatility, we can leave the prices where we're at. Now, some yards will change. Even within the week, they'll change their pricing. So, you might see prices change a lot depending upon the yard. But a lot of other yards, especially when it comes to things like electronic scrap, what they'll say is, yeah, we're going to hold. We've got a slow upward trend here, but we want to wait and see better strength before we raise it. So we're just going to hold here. Now, if they start to see things consistently moving down, then, they'll lower their prices. And once they see some pretty good, strong signals moving up, then they can feel good about maybe increasing their prices. But for this, for a scrapyard that's buying a lot of material, they have to be really careful because they can get hurt bad. For you and I, you take in a bin of material, you might lose $10, $20. For a larger scrapyard, if they could lose thousands or more dollars on a truckload of material if they don't play it right. So let's see, what kind of conversations have we had with what's going on out there? JR Cat is saying that his wife was a soybean trader in China. All right. Again, that's the so you understand through her, the challenges of being in the commodities market. Yeah, buy low, sell high. They're always trying to time that thing out, always trying to nail it. So yeah, it's a tough game there, isn't it? And as small scale scrappers, it's hard for us to play that game. Buying high and selling low, because sometimes you don't have the space to hang on to things. And if you do have some space, you got to decide, what are you going to hang on to? And then if you're in the business as a small time recycler where this is your living, well, you still have to make your cash flow. So now you're trying to decide, what am I selling to make cash flow? What am I going to hold in the hopes of making more money? You got to balance all that out at the same time. But hey, I love it. I think for me, it's fascinating. It's this is what I do all week long when I'm working on my scrap and researching, what's going on with pricing and what am I going to sell, what am I going to not. To me, the whole thing is fascinating, and I just absolutely love it. All right, so it is time to get on to our safety note for the day. So for those of us that are in this scrapping and recycling business, this is a really, really important one. Lifting. How do you lift things? And are you lifting safely? And are you thinking about lifting safely and carrying your material around? So, it's not at all uncommon for us in this industry to have to deal with 40, 50, 60-pound loads, 100-pound loads that we're lifting and moving around by ourselves. Now, technically, anything that's 40 pounds or more, you ought to have somebody helping you. That should be a 2-person lift, especially if it's kind of big and bulky. So, you always want to pay attention to that. You don't want to just bend over at the hips and then try to lift it up, because you're putting a lot of stress on your spine, your back, your lower back. You're even putting a lot of stress on your eyeballs. You can feel it, right? When you lift things like that, you'll feel in your head, that extra stress. So you really want to be careful about those kind of things. Take a minute to think about what you're going to lift. And when you have heavier material, think about ways that you can use leverage to your advantage or get some mechanical assistance. I have the Genie lift, which is a winch kind of thing. It's a person-powered forklift, if you will. It's all mechanical. There's no battery or motor or anything like that. But with it, I can lift and move up to 350 pounds without having to strain my back to do that kind of work. E-Waste Mike has a battery-operated lift that goes even higher. It's bigger and bulkier, but it allows him to lift larger loads, heavier loads, and it's all powered, battery operated. So it makes it much easier for him. And then when you get into your scrapyard, you see they got forklifts all over the place that are helping them to lift and move those loads around. But even still, I see this all the time. I go to the buyback area, and these young guys, they'll grab that bin out of my truck that is chock-a-block full of power supplies and just pop it on their shoulder and walk over and dump it into another bin. I tell you what, man, that is, when you're young and your muscles can take that kind of abuse, but the more you abuse yourself when you're young like that, the harder it is as you get older. And those little injuries, those little tiny chips and breaks and tears in your bones and your muscles and things, that'll add up over time and cause you a lot of problems later on in life. So please be careful when you're lifting. And for those of you that are more experienced scrappers like me, the potential to hurt yourself is much more amplified. So anything you can do to make it easier for yourself, go for it. Roger at CU Scrapping is saying he bought a hydraulic lift table from Harbor Freight. They can do 200-pound barrels into that's awesome, man. I've looked at those and similar kind of things. And I was thinking about getting something like that when I came across the Genie lift. So yeah, that's the way to go. I mean, those kind of things that can help you out are just fantastic. So by all means, take advantage of those mechanical kind of lifts when you can. JR Cat is saying neck and back surgery is no fun. He just went through that with his wife. Oh man, sorry to hear that. Yeah, no, I think everybody knows that I've had my hips operated on, and when I would be in physical therapy and I would see the folks that were in there recovering from back surgery and things like that, yeah, it just does not look like any fun at all. Yeah, and you pop a disc, you'll be dealing with that for a long time. That can be really, really, really difficult. Jared Katz has got a jib crane on his trailer. That's awesome. That's fantastic. When I get relocated up to the next place, depending upon how the business plays out, I'm thinking about a trailer with a jib crane or something like that because the Sharkmobile works great for most PCs that I'm dealing with. And if it's a larger load, I can get the forklift at wherever I'm at to load it for me. And then I'm unloading it by hand, not the whole thing, of course, but you've seen those videos. So yeah, that's a jib crane on a trailer is a fantastic idea. So just think it through. And then the other piece of that is when you have picked up a piece of scrap, especially if it's something that's heavier and you're carrying it, think about how you're carrying it, where you're carrying it. Make sure that the route that you're going to be traveling is clear of trip hazards, slip hazards. We deal with having stuff on the deck in our scrap areas all the time. And something like a little piece of pipe or a ball bearing or something, you can step on that when you have a heavy load and you slip, and now you've done some serious damage to yourself. So you definitely want to make sure that you pay attention to your surroundings, where you're walking when you have a load in your arms. And I mean, it's funny, I've had some people that have made comments on my videos about why you spend so much time sweeping the deck. You get done scrapping something and you're sweeping the deck. And I was like, well, I do that as a safety matter. It's not because I'm anal retentive about having a clean shark cage. I do that as a safety matter. I have a central pathway that runs the length of the shark cage, and I will sweep that routinely during the scrap day to make sure that there's nothing there that I could trip or slip on when I'm moving stuff around. So trust me, I'm not a clean freak. I just don't want to slip and fall. Anyways, Jill, thank you. That was very nice of you. Oh, man. HH, welcome to the show. Ron, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. David, welcome to the show. So great to have everybody here today. Thanks, Jill. I needed that. All right. Well, we are now on to our industrial metal for the day. And you all saw what this is going to be. It's copper. So here we are on copper. And again, I'm back at the Trading Economics site for copper. This is, when you look at this, you're thinking to yourself, well, this isn't bad. Look, we've gone up here. We're doing nice. We've got an upward trend in copper. So that's a good thing. And here, let's get our candlesticks turned on. And when you look at this, you kind of think to yourself, I don't know, is that more green than red? Is that more red than green? Of course, this little crash right here throws you off a little bit. So for the week, though, we are overall up. So that is, that's good. That makes us feel good. Let's zoom in real quick here to get closer to where we're at. And you can see that in the near term, we had this drop, then we recovered, and we're back down again, and we're recovered. Now we're just sort of diddling around here, but that's because this is the weekend, right? So even though the world never shuts down, things do tend to slow down on weekends because the major business players, markets and mills and things, they're not operating. So you don't expect over the weekend to see a whole lot of movement in these prices. So this isn't, to me, this doesn't say that the price is going to be steady for this. Just tells me that it's the weekend. What concerns me even more, though, is we had the drop, we recovered, we dropped again down to this level here, this 3.8-ish level. We recovered. Now, are we going to drop back down again to this lower 3.8-ish level? I don't know. So this is the week. Let's take a look at the month here. Well, the month was kind of weird, right? We were up here at 3.9, almost 4, dropped all the way down to 3.6.5, climbed back out. Now we're starting back down again. So just really weird signals. Again, there's just a lot of volatility in the copper market right now. You can see it in the 6-month. Look at this 6-month signal here. Dropping, climbing, dropping, climbing, dropping, climbing. Look at that. I mean, that's just a lot of volatility inside of that 6-month signal. Again, put yourself in the shoes of the scrapyard who is buying your copper, trying to figure out what they're going to get for that copper in another month or 2 months or 3 months when they go to sell it, or because they don't get paid right away, right? So for them, they will sell a load of it and after the buyer has checked it and done their quality control, then they'll get paid. So yeah, that's a lot of volatility. So I'm just curious, what have you seen going on with your yards? Have they lowered copper recently? Is copper steady at your yards? What's going on with copper at your yards in the last week, 2 weeks? If we look at the 1-year signal here, we're overall down. And if we look at the 5-year signal, what we can see is that we had this drop, that this, kind of like this this COVID, post-COVID hangover. We climbed out as the world opened up again. And then we saw this drop, and now we're into this weird period here as the world is trying to figure out what's going to happen with copper. Now, we've talked about this for a while now, and it bears repeating that the world is moving between two super cycles that are especially driving the prices of copper. So we had been in the Chinese super cycle, and that was being driven by the growth in China, both in their own domestic consumption of copper for building homes and communities and towns and satisfying the demands of their growing consumer base, plus China growing as a producer of materials that were being exported all over the world. So China was consuming phenomenal amounts of copper. Well, coming out of COVID, China didn't really crank up the way people thought it was going to, and they have entered some serious recessionary times. Their housing markets are crashing. They've got literally empty cities. Their manufacturing has been running into serious trouble. So China is not driving that super cycle the way it used to in the past. Now, the next super cycle is tied around the electrification of the world. So EVs, alternative power sources, the green energy, that's going to drive a lot of copper, because the copper is the optimal way to move electrons around in an electrified world. And so we're going to see, the super cycle would be an electrification super cycle, but we're still in that early stages. And I know it seems weird that we say we're in the early stages of that electrification super cycle, but we are. And right now it's kind of slowing down a little bit, because there was this push for EVs, and that's backing off a little bit. There was a push for wind and solar, and that's kind of slowing down a little bit, but it's just sort of a momentary lull. Things are going to start picking up again in the future. And so the electrification super cycle will eventually take hold, and in all likelihood drive copper prices back up again. Now, are we going to see these kind of highs, the almost $5 a pound kind of highs going on again? Or is this $3 to $4 range going to be the new normal that we're going to be dealing with? I kind of think that we might be dealing with a new normal. I'm thinking that this $3 to $4 range is going to be the range that copper is going to be in for a while. So for those of you like me that have been hanging on to copper, or some of your copper, as a strategic reserve, it may be time to start rethinking that. Now, having said that, let's come back over here. Having said what I just said about rethinking copper, if you believe that the electrification super cycle is, no kidding, going to take hold and drive copper prices up, then you definitely want to be hanging on to some of your copper, especially better copper like number 1 and Bear Bright, as a strategic reserve. but I wouldn't be as whole. I wouldn't hold as much necessarily, because we might just be in this new normal where that $3 to $4 range is where copper is going to keep moving around, and so you'll want to make your cash flow. So you still need to sell some of your copper. I always sell things like my number 2 insulated, my lower grade coppers for my cash flow requirements, but I am still going to retain 10% of my better grade coppers, my Bear Bright and my number 1. I'm still going to retain that. And of course, that means that that quantity grows, because when I say I retain 10%, it's when I get to the point where I'm going to take a load into my non-ferrous yard, I look at what I've got for copper and I say, okay, what's 10% of what I'm taking in? And then I will usually take that 10% out of or keep aside the Bear Bright or the number 1 as that 10% that I'm holding back. So I'm going to continue to hold back my 10%. I have the space for it. I've got to rethink this as I get ready to make my move, but it's not as if I have so much that I'm going to have a semi truck just to move all my copper. So I'm going to continue to retain my 10% and watch for the growth in the prices. So let's see, what have folks said is going on or that they're looking to have happen? Patrick Williams is saying Ireland yesterday, number 2 was €6 a kilo for brass. Oh, and brass was 3.5. So I can't do the math right off my top of my head there, Patrick. So I don't know if that's good or bad for you all. If you can, drop us a note and let us know if that's good or bad. That's right. Recycling sees $5 plus in the future. Okay. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just not sure how soon we're going to get there. So I think we're going to see 3 to 4 for a while longer before we get into that 5. But I don't see any reason why we wouldn't eventually get to 5, because I still believe that the electrification super cycle is going to drive the market, just maybe not as fast as we would like it to. Scrapper Wolf 13, been hoarding all of my number 2 insulated wire, number 2 clean copper, number 1 clean copper, and most of my non-ferrous. Okay. And you know what? If you've got the space and you don't need the cash flow, go for it. Nothing wrong with that if you can afford to do that. So by all means. That's right. Recycling is saying Dumpster Jerry got $3.50 for Bear Bright. Okay, cool. Scorpion Metals holding all of their number 1 and Bear Bright. In Norway, you can scrap plastic bottles and soda and beer cans. I've done that before. And Stu, yeah, and it's not just Norway. So there are a number of places throughout the world where they have different kind of programs for bottles and cans and things like that. Here in the U.S., there are some places where you get 5 cents a bottle when you bring back in your bottles and aluminum cans. So there are plenty of places that have programs like that make it that make it good to retain and take those things back in. Oh, let's see. Homer's Reluctant Aussie. My boss told me we make more off of aluminum and irony than we do Bear Bright. That doesn't surprise me. It does not surprise me at all, because just because of where the markets are at. Yeah. And I think also scrappers don't get as upset when the aluminum prices go down as much as they do when the copper prices go down. So the yards are could very well be more inclined to lower prices on aluminum when they're buying it, because they know they're not going to people won't get as upset. And that, of course, increases their margins on that material. So, and maybe that's part of the trade-off, right? We'll lower what we're paying for aluminum to gain a little margin there so that we can offer more for copper where we're not getting as much margin. That could be a very interesting business approach for, for what's going on there in the yards. JR Cat is saying $5 and his basement will be empty. Yeah, I can imagine that. No kidding, man. Yep. Oh boy, I've got so much work to do. When it is time for me to, when I get relocated, and I'm already doing this to a certain extent, going through, all the numbers change, right? All the numbers change. What my new buyers my local buyers will be paying, my cost to move things. That's going to be a huge one. There's going to be a lot of redoing the math. Let's see. Truck van around here, transformers, motors don't bring much, so he chucks them in the and send it to the recycling bucket. Okay, all right. And that's right. Says Scorpion Metals has a grinder now for 45 or 55%. Oh, okay. So now, does that also strip them, or is it just grinding them into smaller pieces with the plastic still on there? Or are you stripping them and then grinding them into smaller pieces so they take up less space? Because that's always one of those questions about, when they're in their bulkier form, they can take up more volume. And so if you can grind them down into small pellets and piece parts, then you can pack them more densely in the same volume, so you have more weight. So that's an interesting discussion. Mike says he's holding his 1 pound of Bear Bright. Ron's saving all his copper and brass, okay, and his Bear Bright, okay, that's cool. Let's see, and Truck Fan's talking about what he makes on the cans and bottles and stuff. Very cool. All right. Let's see. Oh, thank you. Well, I appreciate you sharing me out. That was very nice. Patrick is saying that electric vehicles will be a lot of aluminum winding like fridges. So yeah, Patrick, I'm not exactly, because I'm not in the engineering side of electric vehicles, and I haven't had a chance to speak in any detail with the folks that are designing electric vehicles. There is certainly a huge weight versus electron transfer efficiency calculation that goes on when an engineer is looking at using copper wire versus aluminum wire. Copper is much more efficient than aluminum, but aluminum is much lighter weight. Of course, we all know this, right? We're in the scrap, we know. All right, so when you've got to move, when you've got a lot of electrons that you got to move around, you're trying to decide as an engineer what's the right balance of, maybe I just need smaller copper wire, or maybe I'm going to need a thicker aluminum wire. What does that do for my weight? What does that do for my reliability? There are all those kind of calculations that go into it. It'd be a really interesting conversation to have with someone who's on the engineering side of EVs. So I got to make some notes here. Copper versus aluminum in EVs. Got some research homework to do. I don't know how much we're going to be, we can find on this, but it's certainly a great homework project to try to find some engineers that are involved in this and get a good industry perspective on that trade-off between copper and aluminum in the EVs. Now, certainly we're seeing a lot of aluminum being used in the bodies of the cars. So the next step would make, I mean, it would make a lot of sense for them to go with aluminum windings if the aluminum is going to be able to handle that within the safety margins. That's going to be a very cool discussion. Oh, let's see. We've got Ireland, 15-cent return fee, but you pay the 15 cents up front. Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? I mean, when they put the return fee on the bottles and cans and stuff, you pay that when you buy the bottle or can. Then you get it back when you take it in. So it's the scrapper who can make money on that when you collect up cans and bottles from people that aren't interested in doing it, or just don't have the time or the inclination. So definitely that's definitely where you make your money as the scrapper on that. And trucker fan, yeah, because you're in Norway, so that's a serious shipping cost there. Maybe some of the really higher end stuff, I believe Scrapping Irish has looked at the shipping relative to some of the higher end stuff to ship back to board sort. But yeah, that's a pretty serious shipping fee for you. Hey man, welcome, Salad Cream Boy. Great to see you, man. How are you doing? It's great to see you here. Are you still enjoying the New England life and all the adjustments that you've been through and stuff up there? Great to have you drop in, man. Doing well, not well. Yeah, no worries. No worries, man. All right, so that's right. Recycling, it says we're going to build a water. Oh, I see what now correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm understanding you correctly, you're grinding up the wire and then you're going to run it through the sleuth in order to separate out the insulation from the copper. Is that your plan? Or is that for separating other materials? Anyway, very interesting. I hope we'll see some of that come together for you all. That's pretty cool. Let's see. This is a good point from Daniel. He says, if copper goes above $1 his yard pound, their yard gets very rigid on number one. And that's that's a really important part to keep in mind, because when it does get more expensive like that, the yard needs to be more careful and can be more careful. I've seen that in my non-ferrous yard too. There was stuff that they didn't make a big deal about that they're starting to make a big deal about. So that's a really, really good point. As the prices go up, you, the scrapper, all of us, we need to be separating our material more carefully, because our yards are going to be much more strict in the way they're buying the material. So absolutely got to pay attention to that. Oh, let's see. We got Truck Fan talking about his bike becoming will go between transportation and scrapping mode. So that's going to be really interesting. I've seen some people scrapping on bikes. Depending upon where you live, that's a good way to do it. Plus, you get really good exercise, right? Oh man. Oh, so let's see. I'm just reading through the comments here to see what kind of highlighting we ought to be doing here. I'm trying to catch up. A native New Englander, because you got the heat on, but you crack the window. I get it, man. I get it. When I lived in Cape Cod, I know exactly what you're talking about. For those of you that don't know, Salad Cream Boy, he He came over from the UK and moved over to the United States, the New England area, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that. And I know him through other YouTube attachments. So a Brit that made the crossing. Right. Well, great discussion about copper recycling and the stuff that was going on there. And it kind of takes us to my business note for this week. So, and it's really important whether you're moving or not moving, and it deals with your business context. So, one of the things that we have to do, especially if we're in the business of scrapping, but even if you're a hobby recycler, is you have to get the material, right? Now, one way that you can get the material, if it's allowed and you live in a place where it's worth doing it, is street scrapping. And you see me do that every now and then. They make for very fun videos. And I can usually, pay for the gas. Sometimes I find some stuff that's really good that more than pays for the gas. Sometimes I barely pay for the gas. But the real way, the best way to make sure that you're going to get the material that you want to get is to develop a list of clients that will hold material so that you can pick up a consolidated amount of material, or like your scrapyard where people bring the material to you. Now, I don't think any of us are big enough yet that we have a lot of people bringing us material. Some of us do have people that bring material to us from time to time. I know E-Waste Mike has people that will drop stuff off in his driveway, leave beer cans in his backyard. I have some clients that bring material to me as well. But for most of us that are smaller operators, we're going to collect the material. So it's important to build a base of clients. Well, how do you build this base of clients? I have used a number of methods, going all the way to old school, writing a letter to someone to introduce my services and to let them know that I'd like to work with them. One of the benefits of an old school snail mail letter is most people will actually read them, because it's very easy to just delete or ignore an email. But when you get a letter in the mail, and not, a flyer or, a piece of junk mail, but an actual letter, curiosity at a minimum is going to cause you to open that letter and see who's writing to you and what they want. And I've developed a number of clients that responded to a snail mail letter that I sent to them. So you need to be a little more patient with that, but it can work. Hey, Solers, thank you. Yeah, I'm feeling much better. Thank you. So reach out to people, whether it's by letter, by email. If you are a legitimate business and you have an address that you can do a Google, that you can put your business up on Google. I don't recommend you put your home location on, out there. But if you have a business location and you can be out there on Google, people can find you. So that's another way. And go around and meet businesses and just have a chat with them and talk about their businesses and what you can do for them. Now, I am getting ready to go do this again up in where I'm going to be moving to. So in last August, I was up in North Carolina, meeting with a big scrapyard that's in the area that I'm moving to. And we had a really good conversation. They explained to me that they weren't doing a good job of handling their electronic waste. They knew that there was a market there, but they didn't know how to take advantage of the market. And so we have an agreement in place where I'm going to be their e-waste buyer. I'm going to go in and buy all their e-waste from them. So there'll be a collection point because everybody in the community knows them. So people will bring stuff there. They'll buy it from people, and then I'll buy it from them. So they'll make a little bit of money. More importantly, their cash flow will pick up because I'll be coming in every week, every other week to get the material from them. And then I will do what I do. My value add is recognizing what's worth more money than other money and doing that separating and selling. The The other thing that you want to do is, reach out to other businesses. So next week, I am headed back up to North Carolina with Mrs. Shark. I am meeting with 2 more businesses, kind of, larger companies in the area that have the potential to generate a lot of scrap. I've already set up the meeting with them. We've already discussed a little bit about it online. And there seems to be some potential for helping them do a better job with their electronic scrap, their other recyclable materials, so that they can be more efficient as well. And that's one of the biggest things that we can bring as smaller scrap operators to these businesses is a more efficient way of dealing with their waste materials or their scrap so that they don't have to deal with it, right? So it's just, you got to get out there, you got to talk to businesses, you got to meet with businesses, and then you can develop that client list that allows you to grow your business. This is really important on bringing the scrap in. Now, yeah, you need to have a good list of buyers too, right? So whether it's people buying your vintage electronics at higher dollar value or scrap buyers that either specialize in certain areas that are going to pay you more for certain things. So you have to have both sides of this fence covered. And sometimes getting the material in can be the real challenge, to have a good set client base. And then the balance becomes, do you have enough time to deal with all the stuff that's coming in? At some point, you're going to end up needing to hire someone to help you, which is fine because that's how you grow. So I am headed up to North Carolina next week to meet with some more businesses to talk about some more business. Plus, I will be going around looking at houses. We're going to meet a real estate agent so we can start looking at the housing market. Plus, I need to start looking at industrial sites, light industrial sites, places where I can relocate the shark cage. So really, really important week next week when I make that trip up to North Carolina. Mrs. Shark and I are very excited about the opportunity. It's great to see this all progressing. I won't argue that it's a little bit scary, but it's a good scary. We can't just stand still. Got to keep moving forward and taking on new things. So what does that mean for this live stream? I will not be going live next week because I will still be up in North Carolina. So next week, I will not be going live. I will be in North Carolina for the week. Won't be getting back until later on. So no live stream next week. Got a busy week up in North Carolina, meeting with people and taking the next steps to relocating the business. So let's see. We had some comments about the move. Folks saying hi to Solars and congratulating her on a shout out. That's always cool when you get good shout outs. Daniel Shark, do you have someone in mind to pass on your current contacts to? I had a boss who wanted to sell me his business and contacts and passed on it. So I have offered it to somebody, and they've decided that they're not going to take it because they don't have the time. So I'm back in the hunt again for somebody that I can pass my book of contacts on to. And this also opens the other question, Daniel, is selling some of my capital equipment versus relocating it up to North Carolina. There are some things that I'm thinking I might sell locally rather than pay to have them moved up to North Carolina. They're just big, they're bulky, they're heavy. I can find them up there probably just as easily as I found them down here. So I'm cogitating on, like my pallet jack and the genie lift and that big 3 foot by 3 foot deck scale that weighs up to 5,000. It doesn't weigh 5,000 pounds, but it will weigh things that are up to 5,000 pounds. Those kind of things I might sell here versus move them. And of course, if somebody said, well, look, I'll buy everything, that's essentially what they call an asset sale of the business. So the book of contacts and all the equipment that I have, and then I start over when I get up there. So anyway, the short answer to your question is I don't have someone in mind right now. I'm back to looking again. Let's see. That's right. Recycling is out the door. Take care, man. We'll see you all later on. E-Waste Mike, that's how I started. I sent out a letter with a flyer in it. And yeah, I mean, you literally at times have more business than you can handle in any given week, Mike. So, you've done well with that. And you're at that point where you've got a constant, you're also very lucky because you have clients who are willing to hold that material until you can come get it, which is another really important thing, right? Because some people, they don't want the material to back up. They want you to come get it. But you've developed such a good relationship with your clients that, you can say, yeah, I'll be out there in a week, or it's going to be next week or something like that. So really, really important to develop those relationships. So, no, I'm not getting a double wide. Come on, man. Well, I don't know, maybe a double wide for a business office, if it was like, a chunk of land, and then I could have the double wide for the office, and then maybe some, shop space. That's a possibility, but I'm not going to live in a double wide. No, I'm getting a house. Yeah, scary when you swim in unfamiliar waters. I know, but there's something invigorating about it, something exciting about it at the same time. So, no, I wish they did, man. I wish they did. All the people that I'm doing business with are just local to Jacksonville and St. Augustine. So, although some of them have friends that they have connected me with up in North Carolina. So that part's good. All right. So let's get on to the stocks before we run out of time. I mean, I've been so focused on talking about the move and everything that I kind of forgot about the stocks that we got to talk about. So we're going to jump right over to our stock market report. So this week on the Value Line survey, the industries that were included were petroleum integrated, natural gas diversified, natural gas utility, chemicals, wireless networking, oil and gas distribution, and pipelines. Did you get a theme going on for this week's issue? So that brings us right into Chevron. Their ticker symbol is CVX, and look at this 4.3%. That's a real nice yield on $152.08. Now, Chevron is what we call a Div 0. For those of you that are new and don't know what I do is I look back 17 years at cash flow per share, earnings per share, and dividends per share. In order for a company to be qualified for me to even consider investing in them, they have to have at least one of these three criteria increasing every year. Now, I'll allow them one slip, but every year. And with dividends per share, because I'm a dividend investor, this is my most important category. I want to see the dividends per share go up every year for the last 17 years or more. And I'll allow them one flat year, but I want them going up. Chevron is a Div 0. That means that they have increased their dividends every year for the last 17 years, no hits whatsoever. And if we look at that on a graphical chart, we see here that the gold bar is the dividends, and that's a nice smooth upslope, whereas the cash flow and the earnings have had quite a bit of volatility, as you might expect in the oil and gas market. But this is a prime dividend company, very strong feeling towards making sure that they have competitive dividends that they're offering for their investors. So definitely something that you want to take a look at if you can justify the $152 a share. Now, remember, a lot of your brokerage companies will allow fractional buys. So you don't necessarily have to come up with enough money to purchase one share at a time. There are ways to do fractional share purchases. So it's definitely something to think about. Plus, once you own the stock, or the approach that I take is I set it for automatic dividend purchase. So every time they roll out a dividend to me, it automatically buys more shares. I get them at most times I'll get them with a little bit of a discount, because that's just the way the share repurchase programs tend to work. Plus, those are going to be definitely fractionals, until I build up enough of a position that I'm making that kind of money every quarter when they post their dividends. So Chevron is definitely one of those companies that you want to look at. ExxonMobil is another one of those companies, 3.7%. And remember, I'm looking for anything that's in the 4, definitely something around 4, or more. So Exxon is in that, close enough to that range for me. Plus, they're a little less expensive at $103 a share. They're also a Div 0. So here you can see that they are a Div 0. There you go, Div 0. And if we look at them graphically, they look a lot like the Chevron, right? Good solid upward trend on their dividends, volatility in their cash flow and earnings. Now, there are some people that will say they don't ever want to own stock. They think of the oil and gas companies as the devil incarnate and what have you. My position on that is that by having some ownership in these companies, I have some say, not a lot, right? But at least because I am a shareholder, I can submit, and make comments and try to vote for board members and things like that will help these companies to become a little more socially and environmentally responsible. I'm not one of these people that thinks that we are going to go all electric. I truly believe that there will always be a certain amount of fossil fuel consumption that is necessary by the human race. But I absolutely also believe that we should reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. Companies like Exxon and Chevron, they're not stupid. They know that the future is going to be a mix of alternative and fossil fuel. And so they are also investing in fossil fuels and alternative energies moving forward. So I'm not worried about having stock in either of these two companies. And I do, in fact, own stock in both these companies. So just something to keep in mind. Now, Chevron, I think we talked about this the last, half a year ago, but just in case, if you're not aware of it, Chevron is trying to acquire Hess Corporation. They are dealing with some regulatory hurdles associated with that purchase, but they, being the analysts, feel good that Chevron will overcome those hurdles and eventually acquire Hess. So I don't know what that means for the future of the Hess Christmas trucks, but we will get there. The other company that I want to bring to your attention is called UGI. UGI is a natural gas utility company. They're a Div 0 as well. They're also a much better dividend play at 6.3% on a valid price of $24. So this is a much less expensive stock to purchase. Plus, you're getting a much nicer yield. So if you're thinking about getting into any of these fossil fuel type companies, I would encourage you to look at UGI first as a possible place to make that investment. All right, everybody, we are at the end of our period. So if you have autoplay enabled, you will be automatically directed across the pond and over to Ireland when I shut down this stream. If you do not have autoplay enabled, I encourage you to go to YouTube, look up Scrapping Irish, and join us on Scrapping Irish Live, where we're going to have a blast. And I have no idea what's going to happen, but it's always fun. All right, everybody, we'll see you across the pond.